ever feel like when you're trying to make sense of those big life questions, it's like you're just wandering around without a map or something?
Totally.
Well, maybe Simone de Beauvoir can give us some directions. We're diving into her book, The Ethics of Ambiguity.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, and even though it was written right after World War II, which is kind of wild to think about, it's
Right.
all about freedom, responsibility, searching for meaning, and that stuff still feels so relevant today. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And, de Beauvoir, she was like a major figure in existentialist thought. And she really seemed to tap into something, some kind of timeless human struggle.
Hmm.
It's like, imagine if for a second you stripped everything away, all the rules, all the old ways of thinking, and you suddenly had this
Whoa.
power to create your own values from scratch.
Yeah.
It's exhilarating, but it's also kind of terrifying. And that's really what she's grappling with in this book.
Okay, so it's not just about like picking a side,
Mhm.
am I an existentialist or a nihilist?
Right.
It's about facing this crazy responsibility of deciding what it all means. Because in this view, it's not just given to you, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where it gets really interesting because, and de Beauvoir is picking up on this from Sartre, when he famously said that we're condemned to be free.
Yeah.
She takes that idea and really digs into the idea that as amazing as freedom is, it can also be, well, kind of scary.
For sure.
And it's that fear that leads us to all these, she calls them bad faith ways of being.
Yeah.
Basically, it's all the ways we try to escape the responsibility of making our own meaning.
Yeah. Yeah. And she has those really great examples in the book. Like she talks about the subman.
Right.
He's basically checked out completely, like tuned out of the world and just doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the serious man. He's like super into rules, dogma, anything to avoid facing that freedom,
Absolutely.
And of course, you've got the nihilist.
Right.
Nothing matters. It's all meaningless.
Right. Classic.
But we've all kind of felt those pulls at some point, haven't we? Maybe not full blown, but like those little temptations.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's such a human response, right? Like when you really confront how much freedom you have, how much is actually on you to decide, it's tempting to just grab onto these ready-made identities.
Totally.
It's easier to just go with societal expectations or beliefs that have already been laid out for you.
Right.
Or, frankly, just tune it all out than to face the music and actually forge your own path.
Right. And de Beauvoir is not saying any of these escapes are the way to go.
No, not at all. What she's really trying to do is get us to recognize these tendencies in ourselves. Like when we're tempted to slip into those predefined roles because they feel safe, we need to understand what we might be giving up in exchange for that comfort. They can really limit our potential for living a truly authentic life, according to her.
So, okay, we're not supposed to just like pick our role from a preset menu and play it out, right? So what are we actually supposed to do with all this freedom?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
And this is where the whole ethics part of the ethics of ambiguity comes in.
Yeah.
See, de Beauvoir, she's not just saying, hey, go wild, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
She's saying true freedom, it's not this solo mission. It's like this interconnected thing tied up with everybody else's freedom.
Oh, interesting.
It's not enough to just go, okay, I get to make my own meaning. You got to think about how your choices, your freedom is bumping up against everyone else's,
So it's like freedom with responsibility, but how do you even balance that?
It's tough, right?
Yeah.
And de Beauvoir is not shying away from how tricky it is. In fact, she uses the example of love.
Oh, okay.
To show how complicated this whole dance between freedom and responsibility can get. So she looks at like the traditional idea of love.
Yeah.
Finding your other half.
Yeah, or like completing each other.
Exactly. Like you're incomplete on your own and you need someone else to like make you whole.
Which, now that you mention it, kind of sounds like those predefined roles we were just talking about.
Bingo. It's like bad faith sneaking into the backstory, right?
Wow.
So instead of that, de Beauvoir is like, hey, how about a love that's all about mutual respect for each other's freedom? Like a love that actually lets you both grow and become your own people together and separately,
It's like embracing the fact that there isn't this one perfect formula for love, right?
Exactly.
Because like you were saying, trying to control it, possess it, that's just another way to avoid the whole freedom thing.
Oh.
Okay, so then how does all this freedom and responsibility thing, how does that play out in other parts of life, like our jobs?
Oh, man. She had a lot to say about work.
Really?
Like she was really critical of any work environment that felt meaningless, where it seemed like people were just cogs in a machine,
Mm-hmm.
Like there was no room to be creative or to feel like you were actually contributing anything real.
Yeah, it sounds like she'd be a big believer in finding work that actually has some soul to it. Not just a paycheck, but something that actually makes you feel something, right?
Totally. She really believed that meaningful work is this way to actually use our freedom.
Right.
You create something of value, contribute something to the world. It's bigger than just you. And she saw this not just as some like self-help thing,
Right.
but as part of living an ethical life.
Yeah.
Because it's recognizing this really human need to create, to make a difference.
Yeah, I think so many people can relate to that, right? Like that desire to have work that feels like it matters. It's like she's saying, hey, try to live a free and responsible life, but also like be ready for the world to throw you some curveballs.
Yeah, exactly. She's not pretending it's easy.
Right?
And this is where she brings in this idea of, she calls them antinomies of action.
Okay, what's that all about?
So it's like, even when you're trying to do the right thing, when you're thinking ethically,
Yeah.
your actions, they can have consequences you didn't intend. Like there's this tension between what you want to happen, your best intentions, and what actually goes down.
So even when you're really trying to live by those values, thinking about others, there are still going to be situations where it's like, what the heck am I supposed to do here?
Exactly. And this is what I think is so great about de Beauvoir.
Yeah.
She's not giving you this like step-by-step guide to perfect ethical choices.
Right.
She's not saying there's one right answer to any of this.
Right.
But she gives you this framework for dealing with all the messiness.
Okay, so if she's not handing us the answers, what are some of the big takeaways? Like, what can our listeners, take from the ethics of ambiguity and actually use in their own lives with all this freedom and responsibility stuff?
Well, I think the first thing is she wants you to get comfortable with ambiguity itself.
Interesting.
Like, don't be so quick to grab onto easy answers, ideologies, things like that.
Yeah.
Ask the hard questions.
Right.
Really look at each situation and accept that maybe there isn't one single right answer.
So it's about being okay with the gray areas.
Yes, exactly. Because that's often where life is lived, And the other big thing is you got to be thoughtful, like really reflect on what you're doing.
Right, like what de Beauvoir would call a serious man, but not in the bad way.
Yeah. Serious, but not rigid. So you're reflecting on your choices and not just how they affect you.
But the ripple effects.
Totally. Like, how do your actions impact other people, their freedom? She'd say that's a huge part of living ethically in a world where nothing's black and white.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into the ethics of ambiguity, I keep coming back to that question de Beauvoir asks at the end. Like, what does it actually mean to live a real, authentic life when the world is this ambiguous place? It's like she's challenging us to figure it out.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes it such a powerful book. It's not giving you all the answers. It's giving you the tools to find your own answers.
Right, and maybe that's the whole point. So to everyone listening, we hope this has given you some new ways to think about these questions, because they're definitely questions worth wrestling with.
They really are.
Keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and yeah, keep searching for your own answers. Until next time.